All right.
Hello, out there, sports fan. Welcome to our podcast today. Ask Aaron and Ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
This is Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. EJ.
Yes, yes.
So we didn't really have a specific topic we wanted to talk about. So we just figure today would be kind of just, I guess we just riff on a couple of things. And in broad terms, I mean, this is probably something that, we've both been dealing with recently
Mm-hmm.
with the start of our spring seasons because we both are, work with a lot of spring athletes.
Yes.
And so let's talk about the training killers, the things people do that kind of kill their training. I mean, a
Right.
lot of athletes have the right ones have done the off season.
Mhm.
They've come in and they've done the work, October, November, December, January. And though there's those who haven't. But for those who have, they get to the start of their season and they kill all of the training that they've done or all of the work that they've done up to this point. And
Right.
I don't think they really understand, what really moves them backwards.
Right.
And so, I guess I don't really have any particular notes or anything offhand, but let's kind of maybe explore that a little bit. And
Yeah.
it can take a lot of different forms, but let's talk about the things that kill your training. Um, and just as a side note, you guys should go to our podcast. We've done one in the past that was in season training, something to that effect, where why you should still be training in season, and I think that's also a tie-in into what we're doing today.
I love it. I'm glad we were mentioning this, Aaron, because one thing that came to mind was I was like going, okay, I look at it this way. Athletes that they've been training hard for the off season, right? And then they get closer to tryouts or the activity, and then they slow down because they got to be at school all day or whatever.
Mhm.
And they think that, oh, that was strenuous. They didn't do anything during tryouts. Okay. So that's 2 weeks of inactivity. Okay. And then they don't come in and do their training. Then they get into the season starts and he goes, well, I got to be strong. So that's another 2 weeks. So that's a month now. We haven't done anything. And I always say this, Aaron. Inactivity leads to non-productivity.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening. And then it's a month into it and they go, well, I've got schoolwork or I'm not doing good. I got to spend more time doing this.
Right.
Well, I believe this, Aaron, that it's such a mind game these days about athletes. I think when you're training, you build up your confidence, you build up your body, you build up your mental and physical being that is this unstoppable type person before the season starts. Then all of a sudden we just turn that off for a
Yeah.
month or we turn it off for 6 weeks or 8 weeks and we lose ground in maintaining the work we've done in off season and continue to build during the season. So when we get into the summer, late spring, summer, when it's to go, we're ready to move on with our training to continue to build on that base to have a strong summer season.
Yeah.
But I see it every year. I see this inactivity and athletes just go backwards. And then they try to say, like, okay, the summer's coming. I got more time. I'll do it. But they don't really do it.
Yeah.
They just like, okay, it's the summer. I'm just like, okay, I'll do it a couple times. But no one grinds anymore. I think the mentality of that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So I want to start there with you and talk to you about that because that's something that you and I sit in the gym every day at 3:15, 3:30, and we kind of go on our little our tangents, and talk about this and trying to help people that need help and want our help but don't want to do what we ask them to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like this. I always use the analogy of, training is like putting money in the bank. And, it's there for, so you make those deposits October, November, December, January. And yeah, season comes, you start to withdraw on those deposits.
Okay.
But the key is not to just withdraw on those deposits, but also to make the changes now where you're still investing in yourself, but it just looks differently. So yeah, maybe it's not full-time training where you're going to the gym 3 or 4 days a week, or doing some of these other things that you do in the off season, but it looks like maybe I'm going to the gym, or I'm doing a home program or something
Okay.
that I'm doing maybe twice a week, or in some instances only once a week. So I think athletes don't make the adjustment to switch their calendars, their workout schedules, how they do things around once the season starts. They just
Right.
kind of let the season take over. And, as you stated, the problem with that is most of the time for most of these athletes, the high school season isn't their primary season in terms of being recruited or being looked at.
Right.
It's the summer. So basically, what ends up happening is these athletes, what I always say, detrain during their high school competitive season, and then all of a sudden they've got 2 weeks or 3 weeks to try and ramp up for summer. By then, their body may be depleted. They may be working, through a few injuries or, little niggles there and there. And there's no way they can get ready and ramp up to be their best for the eyes that they want to be in front of during the summer. And every year, I probably would say 75, 80% of most athletes fall into that category.
Right.
And then they wonder, well, what happened? The training didn't work. Well, the training only has a lasting effect for so long. You have to sustain it, and you have to maintain it by doing other work. And yeah, it may not be convenient, but
Right.
that still has to be done. And I'm not saying that, your season and the commitments you have to make to your competitive season aren't important, and they're real, but
Right.
you have to make the conscious effort to work around them and do the things that you need to do, and understand that there are going to be some consequences if you don't. But my advice to all athletes generally is you train through the season.
Hmm.
If the eyes aren't on you during the high school season, you train through that season.
Okay.
It's obviously sports like track and field where, that's where you're hitting your marks and stuff. Yeah, you're not necessarily going to do that sort of training. But for, baseball, softball, some of these other sports, volleyball, where they're all kind of looking at the summer for these showcases and
Right.
tournaments and those sorts of things where, that's where the eyes are going to be. Then you train through the high school season.
Well, let me ask you this. Um, and I think this is important. Wouldn't you train during the high school season or during your season if you're a seventh, eighth grader to prevent injury and to maintain a degree of fluidity
Yeah.
and motion with the body? Because again, we're training off season, we're training the entire body. Then all of
Right.
a sudden, you know, we have inactivity and then the muscles they just like don't want to function
Right.
like they were earlier. I mean, I think detraining was a great word you used there, and I picked up on that. But is it important to maintain some sort of consistency that allows our body to have sustainability and stay away from injury during that time during play? Because I think that's important that athletes don't really take that in consideration, that they're only using that one group of muscles.
Right.
Rather, we were training the whole groups of muscle during off season. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because people get lost in translation, and I see more injuries happen during the season because of that.
Yeah. Well, I think with when you have like seventh and eighth graders, The problem with them is their approach and their mentality to training.
Okay.
And and a lot of it stems from, well, one, they just don't know. They haven't really been in it long enough to know.
Okay.
But a lot of them are overscheduled.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
they're detraining,
Okay.
because they're trying to play for two and three travel ball teams, or a rec team and then a travel ball team.
Okay.
So the reason why they're detraining is because they're overscheduled. The parents are putting them into too many things,
Okay. Okay.
you know? And 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 then so you have a situation where they're overscheduled. They don't have time to train. That's the first excuse.
Oh
And then
yeah.
the second thing is they think practicing is training. Okay. And if you've ever watched a baseball or softball practice,
Right.
that's not training.
That's not
That's
training.
practice.
Okay.
Okay. They're not the same thing.
That's
But they
practice.
think they think there's a level of exertion that goes on
Right.
at practice that's equal to what's happening in training. And it's not.
Okay.
So, that's another thing that you have to understand. Um, is you have to change your mentality around that. You have to, because as you get higher and higher levels, you're practicing and training on the same day. I've said this a
Well,
hundred
you
times on the
are.
podcast.
You,
So you
yeah.
might as well start to get used to it. And yeah, practicing and training on the same day is hard if you're going to two and three practices and you're going to practices 5 days a week. So, well, maybe if you look, instead of looking at the short term, look at the long-term development of your athlete and say, hey, we're going to work with one team that practices 2 or 3 days out of the week, and then we're going to train, or we're going to do some of our skill work on those other 2 or 3 days out of the week. So you can keep that balance. I think middle school kids actually have more available time, but they don't use it properly.
Boy, I agree with that. I think this is not being used properly, and I, I I just don't get it. Like, can you make a schedule and plan a schedule? And it doesn't, it's a guide. I think that's where people really kind of lose track of this, Aaron, because your body tells you a lot, right? When you're training and stuff. But if you make a schedule and you have some sort of guidance and a plan, and I do this Monday through Saturday, say, okay,
Mhm.
and you have your game days and stuff, or if you're playing Saturday and Sunday and you have your training Monday through Friday, you have a plan and you say, this is what I do on Monday, this is what I do on Tuesday, this is what I do on Wednesday, this is what I do on Thursday and Friday. Now we know from a baseball standpoint that most of these kids are playing 2 days a week in practice and they're playing, every other week.
Mhm.
Okay. So, you know, be smart. Like, okay, we practice Tuesday and Thursday. I'm gonna train Monday, Wednesday,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna get my extra work in maybe on Friday and maybe on that Wednesday. And these are the things I'm going to do. I'm
Yeah.
gonna spend 20 minutes on this, and then I'm gonna spend 45 minutes on training. That's an hour, dude, an hour and 5 minutes of just working on your body and working on your skill development as a baseball player. Now, we're not asking to go out and do 3 hours or anything. We're
Yeah.
just talking about consistency. And you said it earlier. It's like compound interest. It's training. You're just adding on, putting deposits in the bank. And those things manifest. I see so many players say, "Well, I'm going to spend okay for 2 weeks. They work really hard, and then all of a sudden they just stop. What happened? Well, um, they don't really have a plan, or
Yeah.
they don't have a schedule. They don't have a schedule or regimen. And what's the sad thing about it? You and I are professionals. Been professionals for over 35 years. People don't come and ask us. I mean, they ask us and then we give them a schedule and then they don't abide by it, or they just don't ask us. And they have two great resources, and regardless if it was you or I, what about some other guys that are good too,
Yeah.
and they don't ask them? I don't get that. Like, do you expect just to train an off season and that's going to be good enough? I mean, I look at all our best athletes that ever have trained with us, Aaron, and the consistency of what they do is so important. And it wasn't this 2, 3, 4 hour a day thing. It was just putting in these little deposits
Right.
all the time, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is you've got to be flexible with your schedule, especially when you're in season.
Right.
So, yeah, maybe you're used to doing some of your lifting on Monday, but now you've got
Okay.
games on Monday, or they call a game or a practice on Monday. Well, just it doesn't mean you just throw it out and say, I'm not going to do it. You just say, okay, well, you know what? Let me move this to another day of the week. You know, let me move it to Tuesday or Wednesday. Find the hole where it's at and put it in there. Um, I always kind of use what I call with when I make programs for my athletes, kind of like a flowing or floating schedule.
Okay.
I don't designate particular workouts to particular days of the week. And I
Okay.
know that's what people are used to. Well, I want to do Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday,
Right.
Thursday. It's like, my thing is you have day one, day two, day three, or day one and day two. These are the activities. And what you do is you cycle through those days. So day one might come on a Tuesday one week, and day one might come on a Sunday one week. It
Yeah.
just depends on the activities that you have during the week. So
Okay.
so it allows you to adjust to the other commitments that you have during the week, but you don't have to say, okay, well, I'm just not going to get it in because I can't do it on Monday.
Right.
It makes no sense to me. It doesn't. And so you have to learn to be flexible, and you have to learn to be able to shift and move your activities so that you get them in, because the key is getting the work done and getting it in. It's not, it has to be done on Monday at 4 o'clock,
Right.
you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Right. I like that.
that's,
I like that. I like that, Aaron. I like that a lot. I like
you
what
know,
you said there.
that's kind of how I handle a lot of my athletes when I give them homework programs. Say,
Hmm.
hey, you know, just get this day in.
Yeah,
And
because you never know, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's just change. Mm,
exactly. But
that.
again, in terms of athletes coming back to us, you know, maybe it could be a communication thing, maybe it's an embarrassment thing, maybe they don't have the confidence in us that maybe they should, but then my retort to that is, well, why are you paying me? You know?
Right. Exactly. Why are
Um,
you using this, right?
yeah. And then sometimes there's a lot, I find this more and more common. Athletes, want to be spoon-fed and hand-led.
Ooh.
And it's like this. This is an analogy I'll use. Okay. If I'm teaching someone to walk and I say, take your left foot and step forward,
Okay.
okay? Then they'll ask, what's next?
Ah, yes. What's
Did you
next?
get that?
Yeah, I got that.
It's like, come on. What do you think is next? Then they'll say, well, you know what? I went on YouTube or Chat GTP, and LeBron says he starts with his right foot. That's the world I'm working in.
I get it.
do
I
you
get
do
it.
you get what I'm getting
I
at?
get what you're
I
saying.
hope you can read
Absolutely.
between the lines.
Yes, yes, yes,
That's
yes.
that's the mentality of an increasing mentality of athletes and parents.
Today.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I wholeheartedly agree with that. You know, pedigree, expertise, experience. Does anybody understand the value of that anymore? That's exactly what I'm coming at everyone with. Does that matter anymore? If you ask me, it matters because we have sustainability and we've been doing it for a long time. And a lot of other people who've done what we've done have done it for a long time and they're really good at what they do. And I challenge people out there today, whether you like what I've said or not, is that pedigree, experience, real time action, athletes that have trained with us, we have track record. Listen to what we have to say. It's not for our ego, it's to help you. So I tell all the parents and all the listeners out there today, listen to what we have to say because there's a lot of experience out there and a lot of and we're not saying that we know everything, but what we are saying is our experiences of getting athletes, young people where they need to be, it's very high percentage of success. So, hey, maybe take some advice.
Yeah.
Never hurts anybody.
I'll leave you with two things. One, you know, I don't have a whole. I mean, let me say this. How do I say this? I mean, the internet can be a good thing and a bad thing, but people need to understand there's a difference between information and knowledge.
Mm,
And the internet can provide you with information, but it doesn't necessarily provide you with knowledge. And there's a human component to training athletes that that anything on the internet cannot articulate.
mm,
It just can't. So
right.
you can get nuts and bolts of exercises, routines. This pro athlete can say he put this something up there. This pro athlete, she put something up. This guru coach put this, but there's a lot more that goes into it than the nuts and bolts of training.
Yes.
And the biggest thing is context. The biggest thing is an athlete's history to that point. There's issues of point in time, when something should be applied, when something shouldn't be applied. There's points of who should this be applied to? Is it appropriate for this athlete at this point in development or this athlete at this point in development? So there's a lot of other factors that have to be considered when you're talking about training. You just can't go on the web and say, okay, well, so and so swings a bat like this, so I'm going to swing the bat like that. There's a path that athlete took to get there, and there's a reason why they swing like that that is particular to them.
Right. Right.
And so even though, everyone is looking for a formula, and I guess that's the one thing that bothers me about our business now. I mean, again, because it is a business now, I think you just got more people who are trying to overcomplicate things so they can sell you the dictionary.
Mm, right.
And we've moved away from basic simplicity in instruction and in teaching because they want to create this mystery, the secrets of hitting, the secrets of speed, the secrets of just to 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 you know, make it something that's you feel like you're getting that special.
Hmm.
And I think that's done, athletes a disservice because now it's so convoluted. You've got all this stuff out there. You don't know what's right, what's wrong. Again, you don't know when to apply it, when isn't applied, and that's why you need a trainer to kind of sift through all of that stuff and say, "Hey, this is good, this is bad, this is when we use it, this is when we don't use it." Never even don't even look at that.
Hmm.
But again, it's something that we have to compete with,
Right.
and we don't have an algorithm that every time someone punches in speed training, you know, my face is going to come up, or hitting training, your face is going to come up, you know. It's going to be a bunch of stuff that's been aggregated, and more importantly just been aggregated because it's been repeated more often. It doesn't make it
Right.
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 And I don't think that people quite grasp how the internet works, and its dissemination of information. And so it's very easy to get latched onto one element of training, or one philosophy of training, one way of doing things, one person, um, just because of how information is disseminated. You know,
Yes.
back in the old days, you had to go in the microfiche film room or
To
pull
figure it
books
out.
from the stacks, you know.
Mhm. Right.
But I think that has a lot to do with it. And so, you know, it's kind of a tidal wave that we're fighting against. You know, we're on our surfboards, we're paddling against it, and it's just hard because all of our clients are being, they're being washed over by a bunch of stuff that, may not be true, may not be right, and I don't know, makes it difficult. And it does confuse the athlete, to be fair to them. It confuses the parent.
Yeah.
So, second guessing becomes a lot more of an issue. But if you understand that, like you expressed, experience, knowledge, having been there and done that is a lot more valuable. Um, I don't know. You know, again, if you're going to go to the doctor, do you want a doctor who's done, I got rotator cuff surgery. Did I want to go to the guy who, I'm his third time, or even his 30th time? No, I picked a guy who's done over 3,000 of these
Yeah.
and is the number one guy at Kaiser,
Right.
you know, not not just by experience, but through referral.
Mhm.
So you got to ask yourselves, who am I dealing with?
Yes.
But anyway,
Hey, well, I tell you that kind of wraps up what we're talking about today. And I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast today of Ask Aaron and Ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
it's Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. We'll see you.